Hada was the woman everyone wanted to be or be with. Her life was a carousel of excitement. Beach parties in Lagos, rooftop brunches in Abuja, fashion shows in Port Harcourt. By day, she worked as a high-end events planner, but by night she was the queen of the city's nightlife. Every club bouncer knew her name, and her Instagram feed was a highlight reel of designer outfits, cocktails, and sunlit vacations. But even in her whirl of glamour, Hada had one constant: her love for church. Every Sunday morning, no matter how late she'd stayed out the night before, she was at Divine Grace Ministries, her makeup flawless, her dresses modest yet chic. She loved the uplifting worship sessions, the sense of community, and the feeling of God's presence. "I don't know how you do it," her best friend Cynthia teased one day. "Party all night, then praise God in the morning," Hada laughed. "Even Jesus turned water into wine. I'm just living my best life." It was during a midweek service that she first noticed him. He sat a few rows behind her, tall, handsome, and impeccably dressed. He had an aura of quiet confidence that made him stand out. After service, he approached her while she chatted with the choir. "Hi, I'm Emmanuel," he said, flashing a smile that made her stomach flip. "You sang beautifully during worship today," he said, smiling charmingly to Hada. Hada wasn't easily impressed. Men often used the same tired compliments, but something about Emmanuel felt different. He carried himself with a charm that was disarming yet sincere. Their connection was electric, the kind that didn't need much to spark. Emmanuel had a way of making Hada feel as though the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. From their first conversation after the midweek service, their lives seemed to intertwine seamlessly. Over the following weeks, Emmanuel became a constant presence in Hada's life, slipping effortlessly into her world. He would text her good morning messages before the sun was up, sprinkle her afternoons with thoughtful notes, and end her nights with long, soulful conversations about everything: their childhoods, their shared love for church, and their big, audacious dreams. "I grew up in a small, quiet town," Emmanuel said one evening as they strolled through the city after dinner. The streetlights cast a warm glow on his face, making him look even more handsome. "But I always knew I wanted more. That's why I push myself, why I work hard. I want to create a life where my family never has to struggle." Hada's heart melted at his words. She admired his ambition and his devotion to building something meaningful. "I get that," she replied, her voice soft. "That's why I love what I do, making moments for people, giving them memories they'll never forget. It's my way of spreading joy." Emmanuel smiled, taking her hand. "You're incredible, Ada, and I want to be part of that joy." His words lingered in her mind long after they said goodnight. Emmanuel didn't just talk about her passions. He showed her he cared. One Friday evening, after a long week of work, he surprised her with reservations at the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant. The venue was breathtaking, with panoramic views of the glittering skyline. A jazz band played softly in the background, and the table was set with roses and candlelight. "Emmanuel," Hada said, her voice catching as she took it all in, "you didn't have to go through all this trouble. You deserve it," he said, pulling out her chair with a flourish. "I wanted to remind you how special you are." The evening passed in a blur of laughter, fine wine, and meaningful glances. Hada couldn't remember the last time she had felt so cherished, but Emmanuel wasn't done. The next weekend, he whisked her away to Ghana on a spontaneous getaway. They lounged on the pristine beaches of Labadi, explored the historic Cape Coast Castle, and danced to live high-life music under the stars. Emmanuel seemed to know exactly what she needed at every moment, whether it was an arm to hold, a joke to make her laugh, or a reassuring smile when she felt overwhelmed. "I could get used to this," Hada said as they walked hand in hand along the beach, the waves lapping at their feet. "That's the plan," Emmanuel replied, his tone playful but his eyes serious. Few days later, it was Hada's birthday. She had spent the morning running errands, expecting to meet Emmanuel later for dinner. But as she stepped outside her apartment building, she froze in disbelief. A brand new red convertible was parked at the curb, with a massive bow on the hood. Emmanuel leaned against the car, looking impossibly dashing in a tailored suit, holding a bouquet of her favorite flowers. "Happy birthday, my queen," he said, his smile lighting up the street. Hada covered her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. "Emmanuel, is this—" "It's yours," he said simply, stepping forward to place the keys in her trembling hands, "because you deserve the best of everything." The gesture left her speechless. No man had ever gone to such lengths for her. That evening, as she recounted the day's events to Cynthia, her voice brimmed with excitement. "He's everything I've prayed for," Hada said, her eyes shining. "God has blessed me. I've never met anyone like him." Cynthia raised an eyebrow but smiled indulgently. "It sounds like he's really swept you off your feet." Hada laughed, nodding. "I think I'm falling for him." When Emmanuel officially asked her to be his girlfriend later that week, the answer was an easy and resounding yes. Hada felt as though she were living a dream, one she never wanted to wake up from. 2 months after they met, Emmanuel invited Hada to move in with him. His house was a sprawling mansion in a gated estate, with marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a walk-in closet big enough to house her ever-growing collection of designer shoes. At first, it felt like a dream come true. They hosted lavish dinner parties, took spontaneous trips, and prayed together every night before bed. But the cracks began to show. The first incident happened after a minor argument. Hada had been scrolling through her phone at dinner, and Emmanuel snapped, "Can't you put your phone down for 1 second?" He barked, slamming his hand on the table. She froze, startled by his tone. "I was just checking a message." Before she could finish, he grabbed her phone and flung it across the room. It shattered against the wall. He immediately softened, pulling her into his arms. "I'm sorry, baby, I didn't mean to scare you. I love you so much and I hate feeling ignored." Hada forgave him, brushing it off as a momentary lapse. But it didn't stop there. The incidents became more frequent and even more violent. One evening, after a heated argument about her going out with friends, he claimed she had stayed out too long. Emmanuel slapped her. The force knocked her off balance and she hit the edge of the coffee table on her way down. Hada sat on the floor, dazed, her cheek burning. Emmanuel stood over her, his chest heaving. "I'm sorry," he said, kneeling beside her. "I don't know what came over me. You just make me so jealous sometimes." Tears streamed down Hada's face as he kissed her bruised cheek and promised it would never happen again. The next morning he presented her with a diamond bracelet, slipping it onto her wrist as if it could erase the memory of his hand on her face. When Cynthia asked about the faint bruise under her eye, Hada laughed it off. "I tripped in the bathroom. I'm such a klutz." But the lies couldn't hide the truth forever. Over the next few months, the abuse escalated. Hada started showing up at the nail salon and church with sunglasses, scarves, and heavy makeup. On particularly bad days, she stayed indoors until the bruises faded. Every time she thought about leaving, a voice in her head whispered, "Where will you go?" She was an orphan with no family to turn to. Emmanuel had made sure she distanced herself from most of her friends. And when he wasn't hurting her, he was showering her with love and affection, buying her expensive gifts and whispering sweet apologies. "I only act this way because I love you," he'd say, holding her close. One afternoon they sat on the couch watching a comedy show. Hada laughed at a joke, her face lit up with a joy she hadn't felt in a long time. Emmanuel turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Oh," he said casually, as if commenting on the weather. "You've been happy a lot this week. You haven't cried at all." Hada blinked, unsure how to respond. "Don't worry," he added, a smirk playing on his lips. "I'll soon make you cry." He chuckled, his laugh cold and cruel, and turned back to the TV. Hada's stomach churned. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that crushed her spirit. She realized then that his calmness wasn't a sign of change. It was a greater trouble brewing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Hada felt defeated. One night, after another violent outburst left her with a swollen lip and a black eye, Hada confided in Emmanuel's mother. "Mama, he's hurting me," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to do anymore. His behavior is getting out of hand every day. Please help me," Hada pleaded. Emmanuel's mother sighed, her expression unreadable. "My dear, men can be difficult. You just have to be patient with him. Avoid provoking him and things will get better." Hada stared at her, stunned. "But what about when I do nothing, and he still hits me?" "He derived joy in seeing me in tears," Hada said sorrowfully. The older woman waved her hand dismissively. "It's just his temper. Try to pray for him. Marriage isn't easy, but you must endure." For the first time, Hada wondered if Emmanuel's behavior was a product of his upbringing. His mother's nonchalance made her question whether his mother knew something deeper was wrong with him. something beyond Hada's ability to fix. The breaking point came on a cold, rainy night. Hada and Emmanuel had been at a friend's baby shower, and Emmanuel accused her of flirting with one of the men there. "I saw the way he looked at you," he hissed, grabbing her arm tightly. "That's ridiculous." "I don't even know who you are talking about," she protested, wincing as his grip tightened. Before she could say more, his fist connected with her jaw, sending her sprawling onto the tiled floor. This time, there were no immediate apologies, no diamond bracelets, no promises to change. Hada lay on the floor for what felt like hours, her body aching and her heart shattered. She thought of the girl she used to be, the vibrant, carefree woman who danced through life like she owned the world. How did she end up like this? She sobbed quietly. The next morning, as Emmanuel slept, Hada packed a small bag. She took only the essentials, a few clothes, her passport, and the small stash of cash she'd hidden over the months. She slipped out of the house quietly, her heart pounding with every step. The rain had stopped and the sun was beginning to rise, casting a pale golden light over the estate. Hada didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stay. She hailed a cab and asked the driver to take her to the nearest women's shelter. The shelter was a modest building run by a local church. When Hada explained her situation, the staff welcomed her with open arms, offering her a place to stay and counseling to help her heal. For the first time in months, she felt safe. Leaving Emmanuel felt like escaping a storm that refused to let her go. He called her endlessly, his texts swinging from desperate apologies and sweet promises to chilling threats. One moment, he begged her to come back. The next, he promised he'd find her no matter what, and when he does, he is never letting her get away. Fear pressed on her, but deep inside, Hada knew she is not looking back. Changing her number was like cutting the final thread connecting her to him. She blocked him everywhere she could and erased every reminder of their time together. Then she focused on starting over, even though it felt like fetching water with a basket. The women at the shelter became her family. They shared their stories, held her hand when she felt weak, and reminded her she wasn't alone. With their help, Hada began to rebuild her life. She secured a new job, one that made her feel capable again. Her new tiny apartment, though modest, felt like freedom wrapped in four walls. And as she rekindled old friendships, she felt a flicker of something she thought Emmanuel had extinguished forever. She felt hopeful again. Slowly, Hada began to rediscover herself. She started attending a different church, one where she didn't have to hide behind makeup or lies. One Sunday during a testimony session, Hada stood before the congregation and shared her story. "I met a devil," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "And I met him in church, but God delivered me. He showed me that I am worthy of love, real love, and that I have the strength to walk away from anything that doesn't honor me." The congregation erupted in applause, their voices rising in a wave of support and admiration. But Hada didn't need their validation. Her heart was already full, brimming with a quiet pride and peace she hadn't felt in years. This moment wasn't about recognition. It was about reclaiming her power, her voice, and her life. Months later, Hada learned through mutual acquaintances that Emmanuel had moved to another city. She didn't care to know more. He was a closed chapter, a part of her past she had no intention of revisiting. Life was finally beginning to feel good again. She had started exploring a new talking stage with someone kind and gentle, someone who made her feel safe. While the connection seemed promising, Hada wasn't in a hurry. She had learned the value of patience, of taking her time to truly know someone. For now, she was content to let love find her at its own pace. And when it did, she believed it would be real, untainted by pain, and strong enough to last forever. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share. Don't forget to comment and let me know where you're watching from so I can give you a shout out in my next video.